The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we are discussing Pet Sematary from 1989, our first Stephen King film. But we're both Stephen King fans. Have you read this particular novel?
Not in years, but yes.
I read this one a couple years ago. I think I paid a lot more attention this watch to the differences between the book and the film in, good and bad ways. Like, I know that's pretty common, but there's one thing that I really want to get into later on that it just struck me. It was so different from the novel this time around. And I'm still trying to parse out how I feel about it. But yeah, this was originally like George Romero bought the rights to this, which is another fascinating idea. Tom Savini was also kicked around as a possibility to direct this. He actually turned it down, and it ended up going to Mary Lambert, who was known for Madonna music videos at the time. Some really good ones, big ones, like a Prayer. Well, that's the one off the top of my head I remember.
Yeah, that came out the same year. But yeah, like the famous Material Girl video. Yeah, she did Control for Janet Jackson.
Oh yeah,
she was a very prolific music video director. Like did a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Stephen King he had a lot of stipulations in his contract for this adaptation, one of which he got to, I'm not sure if he got to sign off on the director, but he got to have influence over that. He was going to write the screenplay. That can be a toss-up if an author is writing the screenplay, adapting it. It had to film in Maine, which makes sense, and that's a very Stephen King thing to do. I kind of like that he had the stones and the power to just be like, no, I'm deciding where your locations are as well. And evidently he was very, very involved, like on set all the time with this one. And
apparently it was only like 20 minutes away from his house.
Oh yeah. Just gets up, drives to set every day. Yeah. Mary Lambert got the job with like her enthusiasm and evidently also just assuring Mr. King that she would be eschewing as close to possible to his screenplay. And with him on set all the time, I think that'd be intimidating. But she did it. Well,
and I had read also that this sort of initially came out of there was a writer's strike going on. And they basically, an exec basically went, oh, hey, this script is good enough that we won't need to rewrite it. So let's shoot this.
There you go.
I don't know the timeline of that, if that all like shook out when they were filming. But that was initially how it all got kind of kicked off.
Right. In some studios had evidently decided that, the time of the Stephen King adaptation, we're kind of past that now because a few had already come and gone. But, as far as his adaptations go, I would put this way up there overall. I mean, out of how many there are.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. Like you do think of Stephen King adaptations and you generally go to The Shining, the other ones, the really good ones. And there's a lot that were made that were not good. I mean, not even getting into Maximum Overdrive. I was
going to say the De Laurentiis years are kind of dark.
Yeah. So there's a lot of not great stuff out there. This one, if I'm being honest, I liked less this time around.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know. We'll talk about it as we go on. But like, I was excited because I liked it a lot when I was a kid. It just didn't hit the same way. Although different things now, I think, being older. Yeah. I think certain things around Gage, I think, got me a bit more or affected me differently than they did in years past. So there's stuff I liked, stuff I didn't.
Had you not watched this since you were a kid?
It's probably been like 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, got it. I watched this I think I watched this when the remake came out in 2019. So and I may have even watched it another time since then. So this is a more frequent kind of like autumnal watch for me, I think. Oh, the last thing to consider as far as thinking of Stephen King adaptations, my mind either goes to The Shining or Carrie, of course, or just those ABC miniseries from the 90s because that had a lot to do with me getting into horror in a lot of ways, because, you know, from 1990, it seemed like all through the 90s, it seemed like ABC was cranking those out. Like, it seemed like once a year, but it's not that many. But like, you know, you got your It's, you got yours, I almost said Jabberwocky, but what's that one really bad
Tommy
airport
Knockers?
one? Yeah, Tommy Knockers. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's the Langoliers is that one.
Oh, there you go, the Langoliers. Yeah, that's it.
Which there's a fascinating movie. I saw it on my phone. I want to sit down and watch it on my phone, but I know it's available on Vimeo, if not in entirety, in part, called The Gatekeepers of Infinity, I think it's called. Okay, almost none of that was correct. This is Future John offering a quick correction. The movie is called The Timekeepers of Eternity, and it's no longer available on Vimeo, or at least the guy has his account locked, but the American Genre Film Archive has picked it up and is trying to get it released in the theaters. All right, now I'll let me continue to be less wrong. And it's a guy like printed out every single frame from the Langoliers and then like plays them in succession, but then like we'll do stuff to them, like characters appear in tears and stuff like that. It's real wild, but it's a neat way to take a pretty not great TV movie and turn to something else. But as far as the ABC stuff goes, I think really got me into Stephen King. That like he was ever present. My mom was always reading Stephen King. I just remember like her always having a big hardback book. Yeah, it was I think the first one that I saw, and it messed me. Tim Curry messed me up.
Yes, exactly. I know I watched that one. I know I watched The Stand. I would watch those with my parents, and we would very often, as soon as this was a game changer. When I learned how to record something off television, and I called it pause the commercials out. That was me being a young cineast, just being like, well, we're not going to have commercials in this. I'm going to watch this a second time, and I would declare to my dad, I'm pausing the commercials out tonight, so I'd have a nice, clean record.
This is labeled the Renegade Cut.
Exactly. Little Jimmy's Renegade Cut, 12-year-old, you know. So like these movies are really nostalgic for me, especially if they were like on ABC in the early 90s, and I think it has a lot to do with my like affection for Stephen King, and also letting him have a pass at times too.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But we open on a whole bunch of gravestones, and little collars are around the stones, and roses and stuff like that, which is oddly kind of effective to me. And the music sounds like it really wants to be Danny Elfman at this point already. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's Elliot Goldenthal, who's quite the film composer of his own right, done tons of stuff. I always think of Alien 3 for whatever reason, because I think I really liked that score when that movie came out. But it does have kind of that Elfman-y kind of feel to it. Yeah. At least that opening tune does.
Cut to a truck just screaming down the road. Our main characters, our family, they pull up in what's essentially a family truckster station wagon. You get your kind of like beginning of Karate Kid type of thing, like, hey, this is our new home. Everybody better enjoy this. Pay no attention to the screaming semi trucks just out of frame here, please.
Yeah.
I found that effective though. Every time they would cut to a speeding semi, especially before the big accident. I mean, obviously knowing what's going to happen, but it seemed like this drumbeat, foreboding sense every time they showed that. It was really effective.
It's telegraphing it, but in a way like it knows it's telegraphing it. It's getting you ready for it. Like this is coming. And it also just the trucks, without getting too heady into the bulk of it yet, but the trucks are just death. You can't escape it. Like you can't do anything to stop it. They're going to keep coming, you know? So it's just be mindful of it.
And especially too, like there's a sense of like, you know, obviously after you've already seen it, but you know, chances are by the time you watch Pet Sematary, you've kind of heard what it's about. And you are maybe even prepared for the fact like, no, they're going to kill a 2-year-old in this.
Yeah.
And so like, revving you up by showing those shots early on, I think is effective, and also almost like kind. It's a kindness to the viewer, just being like, one of these is going to nail that kid, just so you know.
Right. So just relax, man.
Right.
It is, and I think like this book famously, like Stephen King was like, well, this is the one that scared me. I couldn't do it until he had to do it he had to publish it to get out of a contract.
Right.
Like he owed his publisher at the time, like one more book. And so, got this off the shelf, but I think it's because it deals with like the death of children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because he has said before that is like his greatest fear.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, I think it is. I think there is sort of an argument to be made for that. Because you know it's going to happen, like it kind of raises the tension, but at the same time, like the familiarity with it sort of eases you into it. You're like, oh, it's not done in this, like you're just waiting for like, is it going to be this truck? It's going to be this truck.
Right.
It's more just that this, like you said, this sort of ever-present drumbeat that's in the background. It's like, look, someone's going to get taken by these trucks. Like it's just going to happen.
Didn't have virtual walkthroughs of real estate back then.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So Gage immediately actually does run out into the road, and I'm already full of anxiety immediately about, having a kid around a road right there. But we're introduced here to Judd, played by Fred Gwynne, and he's probably my favorite element of the whole story, other than just the atmosphere of the movie. But I love him so much.
Yes. Yeah. He is far and away like heads and shoulders above everybody else in this movie. I love Fred Gwynne's got such an expressive face anyway.
Yeah.
And he was like born to be old.
Yeah. Like a Tom Waits, or
like he just like that kind of his face wears being weathered well.
Exactly. He's ominous and comforting at the same time somehow. I mean, I definitely would find him a comforting presence, like if I first moved into town, but there's something about him kind of appearing out of nowhere as well that is also a little bit ominous. I'm not saying that he plays a harbinger necessarily, but he's going to have some stories for you that you're probably not going to want to hear.
This time around, I felt, usually I'm very sort of, he's the comforting, he's Judd, he's great. I was more uneasy with him this time around.
There was an element, and part of that has to do with my interpretation of the book as well that I picked up on. And
I don't think it's anything like this isn't they fucked that up. It's not a mistake of any kind. It's just, if you start thinking about the more Judge says, the more questionable his actions are.
Sure. Yeah. Lewis, the father, is outside, and Judd invites him over for a beer, and I definitely already just want to be right there with Judd on the porch, and just like if they're going to make a nightly thing out of just having one beer together or something, like I would be there just to sit on that front porch with him for a while.
Just gently steering the conversations away from perhaps touchy issues that I don't want to know Judd's opinion on.
There you go. It was another time. It was another time.
Yeah, Judd. It was another time. Yeah.
They do comment that it is a mean road, and I do like that description of the road a lot. Denise, the wife, passes by Missy. Actually, see, this is where in my notes, I just started calling her Denise, which is Denise Crosby. Sometimes I called her, of course, Tasha Yar from Star Trek, but her name is Ellen, I think. No, that's the kid's name. Rachel, that's it, yeah. We cut to Rachel, the wife. She's passing by Missy, who I believe is like a nanny. Like, it was a little bit unclear what her role was initially.
Yeah, she's kind of like a housekeeper or something like that. And from what I understand, not having read the book, that they left out in this adaptation, they left out Judd's wife.
Oh,
and kind of gave her some of the things she says, or whatever, some of the same problems or whatever they gave to Missy, who she's weird. Like she's like a Bob's Burgers character. Yeah. It's great because she's just like casually like, my life's hell. How are you?
Yeah, I immediately recognized her from an episode of The X-Files that I used to love when I was younger. And she is they didn't go too much into devil worship in The X-Files, but there was one episode that was very specifically about a group of PTA people in a small town who actually did activtively worship Satan. And I was like,
I remember that one. Yeah.
And she just has such a striking look. I think she turns into a snake at some point in the episode, but she's a favorite. What a character actor.
Yeah. Well, she's just great because she just shows up and is like,
always thought it would be lucky to marry a doctor. Wish I had a doctor around with my stomach pain so bad. Guess I'll never be lucky. Hell, I ain't married anyone.
Well, no one loves me. I'll do your laundry. Goodbye.
Right. How long do we want to keep her on? Is this an interview?
Because when she leaves, like Denise Crosby is just kind of staring after her, like, the fuck was that?
Right. The whole family goes on a little hike with Judd, and he takes them out to the pet cemetery. He's got some very great, like, especially just the way he speaks. He's got some great lines about.
At least something good come of it. This place. Couldn't plant nothing but corpses here anyway, I guess.
How can you call it a good thing? A graveyard for pets killed in the road. Built by broken-hearted children.
Well, they have to learn about death somehow, now don't they, Ms. Graves?
Which, of course, brings to mind, like, what? So the parents made the kids build those gravestones? Like,
yeah.
Like, is that a rite of passage?
Well, you bury your own.
Yeah, there you go.
Which is like, I'm kind of glad I saw this after the fact. My partner and I had our anniversary last month, and we went up to the Sou'wester, which is in Long Beach, Washington. I don't know if I think that's the name of it. Anyway, there's this road to the beach, and next to it, there's a place where you can leave collars for your pets that died. Ooh. Not necessarily on the road, but like, they're like, hey, this was like a nice little, it's a cute little spot. And they're like, oh, for our furry friends, leave them a little token. And that would have actually spooked me.
Oh, if
it was after the fact. But before it was sweet, you know. Yeah. But after watching this, I'm like, well, now I don't trust that. Let's go. What happened? Right. What's going on with this road?
Yeah. Who's in charge? So, this is where, Judd definitely instills in them this sense of like fright and wonder, like, this is where the dead speak and these markers will speak to you and that kind of thing. So
yeah, but it's not Ralph. He's not Ralph from Friday the 13th.
It's got a death curse.
Sure.
He's all just like, sometimes people die. Mm-hmm. What I like is because he tells, like, Rachel's not too stoked about it, and
yes, yeah.
Judd's like, kids gotta learn about death sometimes. She's like, why?
Right.
Well, because?
Yeah.
Because like we're all going to die?
Yeah.
I understand, you don't want to, that's a tough conversation to have with kids. It's like her fighting against it like that hard right away just kind of felt out of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that, that we get around to her backstory later on, she obviously is not at all comfortable with discussing death because of her sister, who we'll get to.
Her family sucks.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Lewis goes to his first day on the job at a school, and immediately a kid was hit by a truck and half of his head is falling out. And he knows Lewis's name, which is pretty great.
He's dying. Like, you see Lewis get his team together doing the ER. I need 18 cc's of whatever stat.
Yeah.
And like, he's going to die. He's like, whatever, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And then, it doesn't matter. He's dead on the table anyway. But then he comes back to life immediately.
Right.
And says,
the soil of a man's heart is stonier, Lewis.
Much like Haggis and Pumpkinhead 3.
That's right. Yeah. He doesn't just spill out the plot.
Right.
Which honestly, kudos to Haggis, or I guess it's not Haggis. It's Miss Ossie.
Oh,
in part 2, because Miss Ossie just is like, look, I'm dead, but let me just lay it out.
Right.
Whereas here, this is Victor Pascal, named such because that's the sound it made when the car hit him.
Whoa.
He's like, Lewis, the stoniness of a man's heart. And it's this creepy, ominous thing, and man, Miss Ossie's just straight up.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather have that kind of ghost.
Right. Like, exactly.
Let me just lay it out for you.
No philosophizing, no nothing. Just like, keep your kid off the road.
Look, I'm dumb as hell. Just tell it, give it to me straight.
Yeah. Lewis has a nightmare that night of the guy in his house. And I kind of liked how quiet a lot of those scenes were. The guy just kind of walks around silently. Then, they do go up to the pet cemetery. There's this great image of like the fog that stays with the rock path and it's just kind of winding up there. All that stuff is so atmospheric to me. And, they once again say this is where the dead speak.
But don't, and he warns him, he's like, don't go past here. The ground is sour.
Oh yeah. I love that concept.
I guess initially when Lewis wakes up, he went to bed shirtless, but they went, he's too sexy. You got to put a shirt on that guy.
Right. The problems of the beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, and he's a handsome fella, but man, he's a huge weak spot in this whole thing. Dale Midkiff, like, he's not good in this, and it's a role that requires a lot of it's about grief and loss, whatever, like that, and he's just pretty stony throughout it. I do not enjoy him.
There's some stuff towards the end that I think that he pulled off well.
Yes.
When he's starting to kind of lose it a little. But I would agree. Up top, he's kind of tight.
And I think you could make some arguments too about the script being a little bit. The actors need to bring a lot to it because the script's not telling you a whole lot.
Yeah.
Or it's implying a lot, but it needs to actually do stuff because so much of what works with Stephen King is the way he describes stuff. play setting and stuff like that. And so he doesn't have that to fall back on in a screenplay.
Right. Yeah.
And so the actors have to wear some of that. And I don't think this guy does that very well for a lot of it. But there are moments like this. There are particularly towards the end. We'll get into it towards the end, but I have a lot of questions about the ghosts and their messages and how this all works.
Oh,
but,
well, I mean, part of
not
that...
not to be like Johnny Reddit about it. But,
oh, no. I had some of that same stuff, and then I started remembering more stuff from the book. But yeah, Tasha Yar leaves to go to Thanksgiving with the family.
She beams over to Thanksgiving.
Right. Watch out for the mud monster.
This is a good the stuffing monster. I mean, this is a good example of this where it's like she's going to Thanksgiving with the kids to her parents' house.
I don't like to think of you rattling around the house on Thanksgiving Day. That's supposed to be a family holiday, Louis.
That's why you're going with the kids and without me. As far as your dad is concerned, I'm never going to be a member of the family.
That could be infused with so much more stuff than it is.
Right.
But it just seems like in this, like I don't get a sense of their relationship really. It just seems like they're moving pieces around. It's just a way to get them out so he can be alone for a little bit.
I mean, that's definitely, yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason this is around Thanksgiving practically, just to get the rest of the family out of the house so he can do what he must do.
Yeah, you know what he must do?
Act.
Build a fucking fence, man.
Oh, yeah.
Just build a fence.
Sure.
Buy one.
Yep.
Like, whatever. This is, but it's fine.
It's all right, yeah.
This is a movie by Big Fence. Just show you the problems of not fence ownership.
It's like a bad, like 1970s MST kind of like, why won't they look? type of stuff. Judd calls to say that there's a dead cat in the road. It's Church, of course. I don't even know if we've mentioned Church, but he's like a pudgy little gray cat that they've got. It belongs to the little girl, Ellie, a whole family, but she takes care of him most.
She's desperately concerned about Church's well-being after going to the pet cemetery.
Right.
Judd has awakened in her the concept of death, and she's like, well, won't Church ever die? And then rather than going, well, yeah, but that's not going to be for a long time. Everyone does. The dad's like, nah. Yeah. At first, he's like, no. But then finally, it's like, well, eventually, yeah, he's going to die.
Yeah.
We're all going to die. Like, and it's funny because like the conversation she has with him reminded me of this whole part in Philip K. Dick's Valis, where there's a character, or maybe it happened to him in real life, I don't know, that like basically stopped believing in God because his cat died. That was like, all my cat wanted to do was cross the road and he got hit by a car.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's a very similar thing. It's like, well, then how come God, what is this uncaring God?
Sure.
Cats die?
Yeah. I do love when the little girl says later on, she says,
he's not God's cat, he's my cat. But God gets on if he wants one.
I think that's such an adorable way to think about it.
Which actually, now that I think about it, Fred Gwynne wrote a couple of books, I think like with his wife, something like that. They were children's books. They were all just like bad puns. They were
my God, that sounds right up my alley.
I was concerned about the arms race, and it shows like a bunch of arms like on a track running, like with their fingers. And I think that helped ruin me forever.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking about it. So maybe that's why I'm more distrustful of Fred Gwynne in this.
Right. There's part of the John C. Myers origin story right there.
Yeah. You did this to me.
So they take the body over and past the pet cemetery here.
Yeah.
And they make
Judd's
it look
got a plan.
Super treacherous. Lewis actually like falls down part of the hill. And I did notice in this, like, I love how Judd is constantly ahead of him. He's not tired. Like, this old man is like twice Lewis's age or something. And he's just like hauling ass up this hill with no problem.
That's one thing I would have liked just reading about it afterwards and kind of reading about sort of that moment in the book is that I wish they would have transferred a little bit more of that over that, because that's very uncanny, like you're saying, that Judd is like, yeah, fine. But like, it really just feels like it's a long way to go rather than they're really getting into something weird into a really evil area. Yeah. It just seems like we're on a hike and it's taken a while.
This is where they reveal this great shot, straight out of Pumpkinhead 2.
It's like when Sam Raimi hangs up the Freddy claw in Evil Dead 2. It's just two great filmmakers communicating.
Right. Just having a conversation. That conversation probably even rhymes, so it just fits together, So on top of the hill, we see these giant circular stone monuments, really. and he describes it as the Micmac Indian burial grounds.
Soil's thin, but you'll manage. I'm gonna sit over yonder now to smoke. I'd help you, but you gotta do it yourself. Each buries his own.
I also like to think of Judd just being like, I showed you where this is. I'm not picking up a shovel.
Yeah, I think that's just like the privilege of being an old guy.
Yeah.
Particularly like in New England, it's just like, here's some homespun wisdom to get out of work. Because it is just like, I'd love to help you, but you have to do this.
Right. Yeah.
It's supposed to, add an air of mystery, but that was my first thought too. It was like, come on, Judd.
Yeah.
He's like, I gotta smoke. That's an important part of this ritual.
Right. After a long hike, smoke.
And because he mentions this was the burial ground for the Micmacs, and the Micmacs are First Nation people. But my first thought, though, was hearing Micmacs is that there's a movie Micmacs by the dude that did City of the Lost Children.
Oh,
and it's fun, but it is so French.
Oh yeah,
and so it's just like the burial ground for the most annoyingly French people that ever lived, right. And it's just they just come back as mimes. Oh god, this all just is the creation of Cirque du Soleil.
Oh god,
I will create the best circus.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because it does. There's a whole thing. I think this is probably a good time to mention it. There's a whole thing that doesn't get mentioned at all in this movie, and from what I understand, maybe not so much in any other one as well. Is that there's a passing reference, perhaps a little bit more than passing in the book, of the Wendigo.
Here we go.
Stephen King brings up this evil spirit that made the land bad. Or in fact, I read someplace that said that he also makes reference to like the white men souring the land or whatever, which makes it a little bit more. This area was fine, and then it's terrible, and perhaps maybe all these symbols are there, or like this elaborate symbol is there to stop the evil.
Yeah.
Rather than just be like, Native Americans, they were doing evil shit.
Right.
Let's get on board on that.
Yeah.
I know that's not necessarily the goal of what they're trying to do. They're just trying to give it some sort of exotic magic kind of thing to it. But it does kind of read like, those unchristian savages are just up to no good.
And I just think that there's so much more imaginative things that you can do instead of calling it just like a native burial ground, because like maybe it's just because it's also used in Poltergeist and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of tired of hearing that. Oh, yeah, right. It is in
the first one is just a cemetery.
Just a cemetery. Right. Yeah. So,
but no, it's true. And I think it might be in that folk horror documentary, Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched. I think it's that where they're interviewing someone and he's like, if that was a thing, the entire America is haunted. Everywhere's an Indian
I remember
ground.
that.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It does kind of have that sort of trope going.
Right. And I also, it's just too easy. It's too basic with a capital B. Like, to me, you've got an opportunity to make your own lore here and just be like, I'm not saying it has to be like Cthulhu burial ground, but just like some sort of like high weirdness with rotted soil and that kind of thing, which I guess they do get a little bit more into in the book with talking about the Wendigo. Yeah.
And I think having a being or a force beyond just this ground helps explain some of the other things that happen.
Right.
Or like gives them more of a place or a reason, because there's certain things that like the way some people come back versus the way other people come back doesn't really make any sense. Any of the ghosts sort of being involved is like, well, why is this happening?
Exactly.
If there's some like larger thing at play, and not to say that like, it just brings back the dead, that's not a big deal, but like it really just seems like, no, this is some ground that will do this.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem like there's anything bigger than that necessarily happening. And they try to do it with the ghosts, but it just doesn't, they don't feel like they fit together that well to me.
Right.
And I think by taking that more fantastical element in a movie about raising the dead, it lessens that. And you can totally do that to make it focus more on grief and the human reaction to it. But then I think you need a stronger cast for that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's several moments in the film where, you either hear like a howling in the distance, like one time Judd even refers, that's just a loon.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to be the Wendigo, I believe. And it's also, the Wendigo also has these powers in the book. It's more stated that like they can influence your mind or plant suggestions in there. And anytime Lewis starting to think about putting Gage in the pet cemetery grounds, that's supposed to be like the Wendigo acting his will upon Lewis. And
Yeah.
there's like, if I remember it correctly, and maybe this is just my dumb interpretation, but he kept having the Ramones song Blitzkrieg Bop play in his head every time he started thinking about putting Gage in the ground. Because it would be like, it would just say, Stephen King would literally just type out like, hey, ho, let's go.
Oh, sure.
Put Gage in the ground, and just like...
Was it one of those things that he does in the parentheses?
I think
like
so.
It's an
Yeah, I think so.
Loves that move.
Yeah. The Wendigo speaks Ramones, for one thing, which I think is kind of goofy.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a lot of disparate supernatural elements in not only the book and the film, and they just seem a little bit kind of messy and not in that fun way of being like, whoa, that's just capital W weird, man. Like,
yeah. And to be clear, like, I didn't read this stuff and then go, well, it's not like the book.
Right.
So the movie stinks. It's more just that these were issues I had with the movie, and then looking at them later, I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's why I felt that this was lacking in a bit.
For sure.
So that would have helped. But
yeah.
Because, I mean, adapting a work is hard, and this is Stephen King adapting himself. Granted, you're still dealing with executives, and there could be stuff that, like I did hear something where like they wanted to go, and we'll get to it in the end, but like they wanted the end to be gorier than it is in the book. So, you're making these adjustments and balances or whatever, and you have to sacrifice some things.
Sure.
So, unfortunately, I think some of the things he sacrificed just didn't pan out as well.
Yeah. I do love in the very next scene, Lewis just says, "What do we do tonight, Judd?" Because it's immediately like ominous. It's immediately like regretting or at least unsure. And I like that sudden turn.
Yeah, because he's like he comes home, and because he gets on their way home, when he gets home, he hears a phone call, the phone ringing, and rushes in to get it, and does it. And then Judd's like, "You don't tell her what we did tonight." I think this probably, like, since we're on YouTube, I feel a need to have these YouTube hot takes.
Oh, good.
And here's my story based on the changes made between the book and the movie, whatever, and perhaps what those were trying to say. Is because there's a certain amount of this movie that is about secrets, and is about like the things sort of families like hide from each other. There's a sort of that going in there. Judd mentions when they first get there that he's like, that house has been empty for a long time. I think Judd, lifelong confirmed bachelor, is a very closeted gay man. He knows this stuff. He knows about the pet cemetery, and is like, oh, your cat died. Maybe he killed the cat, maybe he didn't. I'm not saying anything. Uses that, shows him to resurrect the cat. That'll draw us closer. And then he'll be so torn up about this dead cat thing, I can make my move.
Oh.
They have sex. He says,
what we did, Lois, was a secret thing. Women are supposed to be the ones who are good at keeping secrets. But any woman who knows anything at all will tell you she's never seen into a man's heart.
A man can only know a man's. They have an affair, and then the next night when they come back and she's Rachel's upset, and he's like, "You're taking a Valium tonight." She wants her knocked up because he's going to go have sex with
Judd again.
Judd, but then the maid dies.
Yep.
And then Gage dies, and that just throws it all away.
Yeah.
So then that's why Judd's really beating himself up about it.
I think I can get on board with this. This needs one of those classic early 2000 or late 2000s Brokeback Mountain re-edits.
Yes.
Brokeback
Just play
Cemetery.
that tune under that scene, and then we can make a YouTube video with me like making a questioning face, like shrugging, going, "Huh?" And it says Judd gay, and then boom, rolling in them clicks.
Yeah. Anything for those.
Yeah, but no, he does give, because it was that speech that made me think about it, because he does say that, like, woman's never seen into a man's heart.
Right.
I mean, I think basically what they're saying there is that, it's hard to get into a man's heart, so you got to tend to what you do love.
Sure.
Judd introducing him to this thing is basically like, well, this ground is awful and cursed, but I buried a dog up there, and it came back weird. It did, like, the flashback is the dog like is bloody and growling and seems mean, but it doesn't do anything.
Right.
And then Judd is like, well, when it died in its sleep the next time, I put it down. And Lewis is like, well, does anyone ever put another, like a human being up there? And he's like, God, no. Oh, Lord, no.
Right.
Lies about it. Because that's what Judd's good at.
Right. Lewis calls his family, and immediately daughter asks how church is. Slow shots of him looking around half crazed already when he hears Gage say in the background, "Hi, Daddy, I love you." Next scene, church is back, baby. He's got glowing green eyes, hissing. I like thinking of, I think when somebody says in the film he chewed his way out, like how did he get out? Which is just kind of fun to think about.
Well, I also like that, like the way they treat the evil church, the Gray Cat, is like how they treat the replicants in Blade Runner, where he's got these like green, like there's a shining of his iris of his eyes and they're just green.
Yeah.
Anytime, I guess, if you have cats on a movie, cats are very difficult to train, and so you have a whole bunch that you train to do one thing.
Yes.
So there's like one one church that was for cuddling, one church that was for screaming, one church that was for scratching.
Yeah.
I like that it shows you that so church is super creepy, and then when he like picks Church up, it swats at him. Then later when Lewis is in the bath, Church like throws a dead rat at him. Yeah, I have a gray cat that brings in dead rats a lot.
Yes.
I don't know what to think about that.
I don't just watch out next time for bath time.
Yeah. And stepping on them in bare feet is disgusting.
Ew. Yeah.
Actually, I had one because Sturch will kill them and like eat them. But our old cat Tiger would like kill them and then like display them.
Oh.
Like a dead rat and then like maybe like a single blade of grass laying over it. It was very much like a Hannibal serial killer.
Yeah, there
you
go. Yeah.
Setting up these displays. So this movie firmly in the camp that all cats are evil.
Yeah. And all cats are gray for you Cure fans.
That's right.
So he goes to hang out with Judd. They drink some beers on the porch again, and you hear another, loud, ominous truck. This is where, Judd tells a story about Spot, his dog. We get a long flashback, and I do love when Lewis says, like, is anybody buried anything else up there? He just says, Christ on his throne, no.
Yeah, just like dumps over all the beers.
Yeah.
I love that exclamation.
Yeah, exactly. Family comes home, and he has to tell his daughter that Church is okay. She had a dream that Church got hit by a car. I think a lot of Ellie's like weird telekinesis or whatever you want to call it, or is just a little, I don't know if that's the right word, telekinesis, but like her dreams that she keeps having is just another like idea that is kind of incongruous with, you've already got so much of this magical lore going on that now you introduce like a kid who sees the future in her dreams, and it's just, it's a little bit much.
Well, if you had these sort of like what felt like larger forces at play, like figure influencing things or something like that would make a little bit more sense. But that first dream in particular seems very much like, you would have that dream because you're obsessed with death in your cat right now.
Right, exactly.
And like, that's just at the forefront of your mind. So I had a dream that he died and you took him to the pet cemetery because I just saw all those things.
Yeah.
I kind of like that entrance into it. That like, is she predicting what happened, or is this just, it makes sense she would be dreaming this?
Yeah. Missy, we cut back to Missy, and she just runs downstairs and hangs herself.
Yeah.
Leaving a note. I hate to say that I really liked the shot of her hanging herself, but I'm just saying that it was very unusual. She was so determined. I've just not seen...
Yeah, she just bolts for it.
I've just not seen a scene performed in that way of a hanging. So
yeah, usually it's a lot more like, okay, I'm collecting myself. I'm doing this. So she is like she's got to ring a bell and hit that under a time limit or something. Like
totally
trying to get a prize. It's not like they spend too much time with her, but it is kind of weird that her character just exists to die.
Just to die, yeah.
I do like that it's like, well, I've been trying to shield my kid from the concept of death, and then this woman's like, got stomach cancer, it hurts.
Yep.
Deal with it.
Right.
He's revived this evil dead cat, which the daughter can tell something's off because he smells real bad.
Smells bad, yeah.
But apparently he's nice enough to everybody. He has to talk to her about death now.
Yes. Which he does after our man Stephen King makes a cameo appearance as a priest at the cemetery.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you.
Yeah, with some Garth Marenghi ass hair.
Oh,
like that is
absolutely, yeah.
I know that was more of the style at the time, whatever. But I just all I'm thinking about is Garth Marenghi. So sorry, Steve.
Yeah, he does have to explain to his daughter what happens when we die. He says that they go back and forth on the classic like, does the light switch go off, or do we live on forever in heaven, and that kind of thing. Rachel overhears it and is not so hot on this philosophy, and that's when she finally tells him for the first time about her sister Zelda wasting away. She has spinal meningitis, I believe.
Spinal meningitis.
Got her down. But she says that if she dies, she wouldn't feel any more pain. And we get the famous flashbacks of Zelda looking pretty gnarly, like
Yeah.
tucked away from the family in this kind of like almost medieval. Well, it's a little bit more old fashioned, but it's just like one of those like.
It seems out of time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a sick room of some sort. Oh, and there's that massive weird painting of the little girl in the blue dress.
Yeah, so they keep going back to with the cat. I think that's supposed to be like Gage later because Gage is dressed kind of similar, but it's frankly a very silly looking painting.
Yeah,
that's a piece of great ingenuity by Mary Lambert, is that she was looking for little girls to play that role and was like, they just keep looking cute.
Yeah,
and so cast this guy to be it. And there's part of me I'm like, well, would it have been effective if they like still had a little girl's voice like overdubbed?
Oh yeah.
But that might be a bridge too far. I don't know, because like this really works. Like this is some body horror, and it's not like horror in general does not do well with the disabled.
Exactly.
In terms of like that becomes this monstrous thing. But there's a certain amount of this that's like you are experiencing this as Rachel's flashback. This is how Rachel remembers this moment. Is like Zelda is now this inhuman thing. That might not be at all what Zelda really looks like. So don't blame Mary Lambert. Blame Rachel. Rachel's the villain here.
Right.
But it is very creepy and very upsetting. But yeah, her parents just leave her with Zelda, and who basically just dies like because she's choking and her body is just twisted and she's in all kinds of pain. And her parents are like, look, we can't be home for this. Like there's a great dinner special going on at Denny's. You deal with the kid.
Yeah.
I also love, by the way, as she's telling him the story, like she's wearing pajamas that have shoulder pads. I know. Like,
I did notice that.
Really,
yes.
Yeah. Not to break away from the sheer horror of what's going on, but I was like, why would you have shoulder pads?
Right.
Man. Weird styles. But anyway, yeah. But it's a very effective scene. Like that's one of the things that really stands out for me in this movie. That's one of the first things I think of is Zelda.
Yeah. We cut to a close-up on a truck, which makes me think I need to watch Maximum Overdrive at some point here soon. A lot of semis in here. Some guy is driving the truck, listening to the Ramones, Stephen King's favorite band at the time, while cutting back and forth between that guy driving and the family having the perfect family picnic. There's a bit in the book, if I remember correctly, the truck driver is saying that he wasn't really speeding before he got to this town, Ludlow, I think it's called. And as he crossed into Ludlow, he started getting the urge to speed up. So there again, you've got a little bit of the whole, the Wendigo is putting out the radio signals to do something bad when you get like in the proper area. And then Gage gets hit. The moment that we've all been waiting for.
This is put together rather awkwardly, I think, because they're flying a kite and it's all cute, and then like they just let Gage fly with himself. And this kid, by the way, Miko Hughes, usually you cast twins for child actors, so that way you can work longer because the kids have limited thing. And certainly the daughter is played by twins, but Mary Lambert saw Miko and was like, this kid's got the goods.
Yes, and he does.
He's great. Like he's like ideal for this sort of thing with what happens later. And I think to add some of the weight to what's going on, it's not just like the Pepsi girl that's he's adorable thing. But like the menace also kind of works. Yeah, so he's flying the kite and then he drops it and the family's like, ha ha ha. And then the dad just turns around to stare at his family for a bit.
Right.
I know it's supposed to be like, well, you just look away for a second and the kid gets into trouble, but like it seems really, really drawn out. He's like, there's my family.
Yeah.
Look at him go.
Yeah.
I'm sure this will all be no problem. I don't need to turn around anytime soon. Everything's good.
Well, maybe it's time to turn back around. I'll start turning in 5, 4.
And then Judd is like, oh my God, the kid.
Yeah.
And turns around and tries to get after Gage and then just eats it, trips over his own feet. And then Gage, gets taken out. And it's a very effective shot how it's just the lone child shoe playing Baby Shoes Never Worn. But then as he gives the Darth Vader-y no.
Oh, for sure.
It cuts to like family photos that are on the pavement as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get the idea that like, oh, you're thinking about these moments, but why are they on the pavement?
Right.
I don't know.
Did they have a photo album out there?
It kind of took me out of it a little bit. Yeah, like Gage was carrying a photo album.
But we do get to the funeral. Yar's father, who, we've established for whatever reason does not like Lewis, ends up punching Lewis out. Lewis falls into the coffin, which, of course, the lid spills open, and you see a little hand.
Yeah.
Which was a really effective shot, I thought. That was upsetting.
That was great. And I think this is a moment that I will give Dale Midkiff credit for, is that, yeah, the dad is just like yelling at him, like, it's all your fault. He shoves him, falls in the casket. Yeah, the casket just pops open a little bit. It's like the hand falls out. You just see the hand, and like you just see all that rage just turn into grief.
Yeah.
And that was great. But I did like that moment.
Later, Lewis finds Church is just standing guard over Rachel.
Fuck off, hairball.
I started thinking about like where Church's allegiances are, like, and who controls that. And I was thinking about it, especially in the context of later on, like, is Church protecting Gage later on? Is Church protecting Rachel? He clearly doesn't like Lewis.
Right.
I don't know what his motive, and I know questioning the motivation of a cat is kind of stupid, but within the context of, you know, this evil magic, like I kind of want to know like where his allegiances lie and why.
Well, particularly because as Judd tells him after Missy's funeral, you know, he's like, "Oh, how's your cat?" He's like, "Oh, it's Ellie's cat." He's like, "No, it's your cat now because you did this."
Oh,
and like,
okay.
You know what a man owns comes back to him or whatever.
Yeah,
like, that's your cat. For being his cat, the cat wants nothing to do with it.
Right.
Which is cat ownership.
I was going to say, there you go.
Yeah.
Judd visits and explains what happens when a body is buried up there. He finally comes clean.
Yeah.
And so we get this flashback of a dad who buries his son in the Micmac grounds and comes back very troubled. Would you say zombie-like? You know?
He's just straight up a zombie.
Yeah.
Like he's a zombie, and departing is what I read later, departing from the book, is that it's a certain point when they all come to like, well, something's going on with this guy. He's evil. When the townsfolk, including Judd, confront him, he starts like telling secrets about them.
Right.
That he knows.
Yeah.
That like he should have no way of knowing. But he's just a zombie, and like even like lurching around like one.
Right.
Until the townsfolk's like, well, you got to kill him. And then rather than in the book, the dad like shoots him and burns down the house with himself in it. Whereas this one, it seems like the townspeople burn down the house.
Right.
And while the kid is like, "Dad, hate living. I do love that this provides a chance for that fantastic line.
Sometimes that is better.
But it does sort of call into question, like, so you knew all this happened and you still are like, you know what we should do is bury your kid's cat there.
Yeah. Well, is that the Wendigo, like, getting him to come up?
Yeah, but if you don't have the Wendigo, then it's just like, I think it's just Judd's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Is really like, he certainly feels bad and is trying to do his best, but like, you really fucked this up. You're like malevolently dumb.
Right.
It's a problem.
Right. Yeah, he did just start yelling, you know, the ground wanted Gage dead because, you know, I told you about the power and that kind of stuff. So he's coming to realize what he's done. The
power of the love between two men.
Yeah, there you go.
They refuse, either one refuses to recognize.
Right. Family leaves for Chicago. Father-in-law apologizes, and I did like when Lewis just says, you know, we all lost our minds to the father-in-law.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Yeah, they try to, for a moment, patch things up.
Yeah.
Lewis sits down next to Gage's grave, and Pascal's ghost appears to him once again, saying basically like, don't do what you're thinking. The ground is sour. So we're starting to get a little bit more of Pascal's motivation going, because he doesn't seem to be as clearly connected to the Wendigo, because he's trying to, and I know it's unfair to bring up the Wendigo to a point in the film, but just like, maybe when I say that, it's just
he's
like
an independent
the force.
entity.
Yes, yeah. So like this ghost is not a part of the grounds. He's just his own thing.
So, I mean, because I think the idea is that like, so he's coming to, I think he even says it, like he's coming to help Lewis because Lewis tried to help him even though he was going to die. But if the problem is that death is inevitable and you're trying to subvert death, why would that be good that Lewis did that? You know what I mean? Like, I understand that at the core of it, it's that like, yeah, Lewis still tried. He still tried to like make sure this guy wasn't dead. And what's the afterlife like where you're like, no, I'd rather just hang out and thank this guy.
Sure.
That seems like a bummer.
A lot of gratitude.
Whereas again, if there's like another like force happening, you're like, oh, well, I can actually do good fighting this evil force. But when it's just like, no, this guy is solid. It seems a little thin.
Right. The daughter has another one of her dreams and starts screaming about Pascal. And that's when the mom finally puts it together that Pascal was the name of the guy.
Pascal sort of lays out to her kind of what's going on. And that he tried to warn his dad before he became I can't remember. She gets upset, and it's discorporated.
Right.
Why would you say that to a child?
Sure.
What the hell, Pascal? Just like use small words.
Yeah.
I know you're in college, smarty, but just come on. You're talking to a child.
Sure.
And this sort of starts the thing where it's not like Rachel starts seeing Pascal. But he's hanging around her a lot.
Hanging around with her.
And that I didn't love because it's like, who's that for?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, for me, the audience to see that like forces her at work to like try to bring her to save what's going on. I don't know. It just kind of felt like really later when you see him rent a car.
I was going to say that.
It's like, why am I watching this?
Yeah.
Like,
well, is he somehow influencing the car rental lady to just be like, don't forget about that one that we could use? His performance is also a little goofier when he starts hanging out with her.
Yeah, I don't mind watching it, but there's a certain amount of like, what's happening here? Why am I seeing any of this?
Totally, yeah. She calls up Judd asking, she can't get a hold of Lewis, and she's just saying, do you know where he's at? Judd, of course, refuses to say. So she decides that she needs to hightail it home from Chicago. We get a lot, just basically for the next bit, we get a lot of intercut between her trying to get home to Lewis and Lewis, you'll never believe where he's at, wife. He's decided he's going to fully dig up Gage's grave.
This is where Judd really shines.
Okay.
Because he started piecing together what's going on, and then he's sitting on his porch, and he's like, gotta smoke, and he's like, well, you started this, you gotta fix it. He has one beer and passes out.
I know.
Way to go, Judd.
Right.
Went to the Reggie Bannister School of Saving the Day.
Right. It's like,
come on.
You have one job, and what do? You sit down with a six-pack of Budweiser.
I'll do that. I mean, I got to have one beer first to get up the courage.
It's like what we were talking about before the record. Like, I picked these arbitrary goals for me to do.
As soon as that's met, then I can
go do this. So as soon as I have this one beer, which will make me pass out and sleepy at least, then I will go stop my friend and neighbor from digging up his dead child.
From conjuring up a dead baby.
It's all right.
I mean, it's a baby. How much trouble could it be?
Right. There is a creepy shot of Lewis sitting on the edge of the grave, just holding Gage's body.
Yeah.
And just kind of staring off into the middle distance and just saying, like, I think he's at this point saying to himself, like, if he comes back bad, I'll just put him down again. Yeah. Which is also a creepy thought to himself. Just like, oh, so you're resigning yourself now to murdering your own child here soon.
That's an upsetting thought.
Right.
And I kind of would have liked to, because I mean, there's so much of this movie, and this isn't specific to this kind of movie. There's a lot of horror movies that are like fairly stayed in like the last half hour, things go nuts.
Yeah.
But like, I would have liked a little bit less piece moving around at the beginning and a little bit more time spent with this, because like this is such a pivotal thing of like him making this decision.
Yeah.
And like going nuts with the grief about it. And I think that would have been more interesting to explore than some of the other stuff that we spent time with.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. So he takes Gage's body and he's running up the hill to the pet cemetery or the place beyond. There's a very awkward special effect of, I think is that Judd's face that comes out of the darkness?
I don't know whose face that is, but it's very like Abyss style.
That was as
face
close
at the end of a tube.
Right, as I could think. And this is the point in the book where, or maybe it's when he's coming back down. I can't remember which it was, or going up. This is where he does come face to face with the Wendigo. Like he sees the creature. It's like 60 feet tall or something like that. And it's got pretty cool looking, really, from the description. But I think this is where like the Wendigo doesn't do anything to him because he realizes, oh, he is going to go raise the child. Again, what's the Wendigo's motivation for like having him raise a child from the dead? I don't know.
Right. But and then like and again taking the Wendigo out of it, like what is that thing he just saw? What was that?
For sure.
It just seemed like, let's have an effect here.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit with anything else. It doesn't seem like, is he crazy or is this happening? It just is it's a neat thing that happens that, I don't know. Felt incongruous.
Yeah. Of course, Rachel's rental car blows a tire and she wrecks. She has to hitchhike with a trucker, which is also kind of, funny in the context of the story. But, did the tire blow on its own, or is it because she's getting closer to home? This mysterious force is at work once again. Gage rises from the grave. His little hand knocks some rocks off the gravestones. He basically... I guess he walks home and he goes straight for Daddy's scalpel. And I did like the way that they filmed him here because they purposely just don't show his face for a very long time.
Yes.
You're kind of scared of what his face will look like. And that's all really effective, I thought.
Absolutely. Although you kind of wonder, like, okay, so you just expected your son to just know how to get home? He's a baby.
I thought that too, yeah.
Why didn't you just stay there? Man.
You come back with certain knowledge, I guess, Judd ends up starting to look for Gage. It took me a second to realize that Gage was actually in Judd's house. And so, it wasn't very clear on that. But he hears the kid laughing and he's looking around inside one of the bedrooms and Gage is underneath the bed, slashes, not just slashes. I really like this shot.
Yeah.
He saws at the Achilles tendon with a scalpel.
Ooh.
And it would have been one thing if it was just a slash, but he's in there like cutting at it.
Yeah.
Judd goes down.
That is brutal.
He then slashes at his face, kind of like Heath Ledger Joker style a little bit, with getting two cuts up the side of his cheek, and then bites his throat out. So this 1, 2, 3 punch from Gage is fantastic, I thought, he goes hard,
right out. He just pops out of that ground, ready to fight. The question I have, though, also, and stuff that happens later, again, maybe having that sort of bigger force might answer some of this, but it's like, okay, so the one guy you buried and comes back is a zombie, but somehow, like, Gage can dial phones and do all this other stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Like, is he a lich, a leech, or something? Like, is he a sorcerer that you buried? Like, and rose from the dead. It seems very, for this one guy just shambling around, to Gage being like, haha, I'm top of it, just seems strange.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Like, Gage is creepy as hell.
Yeah.
But it just, when you think, if you think about like what came before, how come it's different with him?
They do make it a point to say that the guy that was buried in the past died on his way back home, which also is just like cruel. But it's one of those things where he didn't die in Europe. They shipped his body back. And so he's been dead for a longer amount of time to make him a worse raising, I guess.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, I mean, that could definitely lead to Lewis's later thought about the freshness of it.
Exactly.
And I mean, and the reality of it is, because it's evil.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's black magic. What do you want from me?
Right.
But it just, in terms of storytelling, I just couldn't help but think of some of this stuff.
Yeah. Rachel is dropped off and Pascal says he's not allowed to go any further. And I want to be like, well, not allowed implies that someone is telling you not to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So who is this middle management person? Like, setting these rules. I'm not complaining. It's more of just like, well, once you imply that kind of lore, I kind of want to know what it is out there.
Yeah.
Whatever your problems are, I hope they work out. It's the end of the line for me too. I'm not allowed any further.
I'm sure things will be fine.
I'm not.
No one can hear him say that, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, it was funny. Rachel hears Gage call her name, and she walks into Judd's place, calling for Judd, but only hearing moaning from upstairs. And she gets upstairs, and she finds Zelda, who starts screaming at her. And then all of a sudden, my God, why is Gage dressed in a little top hat and cane and brandishing a scalpel? Oh, yeah, it's from the painting that we saw earlier. So we're trying to bring these two ideas of death together for Rachel.
But yeah, because it seems like Gage is messing with her. That Gage somehow has gotten into her head and like knows what scares her. And that's very frightening.
Yes.
I don't, whether or not you want to try to explain that as, whatever, but like that Gage is not only is Gage something else, he's something powerful.
That makes me think just now, though, that since in the book they described it as like Timmy, the the guy from World War One, was telling secrets. Maybe Gage knows the secret of Zelda at this point and is using his hallucination powers to get at her. So it might be wrapped in with that.
That would make sense. Like if they had shown Timmy doing something like that, I think that would have been a little bit more effective than just hate living.
Right. Yeah. Lewis wakes up. He gets a phone call from Erwin, the father-in-law, asking if Rachel made it back okay. He's noticing footprints all through his kitchen now. Gage then immediately calls Lewis on the phone. Again, what you were saying, he knows how to use a phone.
First I played with Judd, then Mommy came, and I played with Mommy. We played, Daddy. We had an awful good time. Now I want to play with you.
And so Lewis loads up a syringe and heads over to Judd's. We don't need to know what's in the syringe. That always implies something bad.
They don't make him, when he says stuff like that, like I have something for you, Mom, whatever, they don't make it sound evil.
Yeah.
Like it's just the context around it. I think that was a very effective choice. It's not like he's like, I have something for you, Mommy.
Yeah.
He's still just a little kid saying that stuff, but it's just because of the context, it's way, way worse.
Yeah, especially when he says no fair at the end.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So Lewis goes out and stumbles upon church. Here's where I get into the allegiances thing a little bit, where I'm just like, is church trying to keep him from going in there? Is he working alongside Gage? I'm just a little curious about.
I think once Gage came back, church is like game recognized game.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, we're a team.
Right. Lewis traps him and injects him and lays him down in the road. And once Lewis gets to Judd's house, the whole place looks like it's all old and grown over and mossy and dilapidated. Don't know why, but it was kind of neat.
It looks cool. Yeah. I mean, in the scenes where things get kind of dreamy and strange, I think it's when Mary Lambert is really great, because that really disorienting. I mean, the house looks great, and just like the way the camera's sort of wobbling through it, I think is very cool. But then like immediately just like
turning it
cuts
off
to no, it's normal.
Yeah.
But you hear Gage's laugh because Gage is messing with him.
Yep.
Too.
Yeah, and Gage literally says,
Scared you, didn't I?
Gage has the power to make everything look that way, whether he gets it from the cemetery soil or just he's now one with that entity or whatever.
He came back different. That's all you need to know.
Lewis finds Judd's body with the mouth cut wide open. It's pretty great. Gage.
That's a great fake Fred Gwynn.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
definitely.
Really, it's effective.
Gage drops Rachel's body from the attic, hanging by a noose. Now, do we want to argue over how a little toddler got a woman up into the attic and then tied a noose and all that? Nah, who cares?
I mean, I'm guessing he's just powerful, because I mean the fact that like you should be able to sort of like throw that kid to the side,
for sure,
but somehow cannot. So I'm guessing he's got he's magic.
Yeah,
he's got powers. Of all the things I thought about this movie, I did not even consider that. I just went, that's
fine. He does jump down to Lewis head first, and that's like one of the only shots where all the trickery with using the kid looked fake at all, because he looks like a Chucky doll, and
he does not nearly as bad as Pumpkinhead 3, but it does sort of break the illusion a little bit.
And I love this stuff so much that I kind of like it. Shots like that endear me to it, though, so it's less a criticism and kind of like there's the effect. I see what you guys are doing.
People made this.
It's cool. He just keeps cutting into Lewis with his scalpel. Again, I don't know why Lewis can't toss this kid to the side, but can't for whatever reason. Lewis gets Gage to just kind of walk over to him and lures him over and shoves the needle right in his neck. No hesitation. Good job, Lewis. For the rest of Gage's short second life right here, all of his expressions are so incredible. Like,
oh God! Like I almost hurtful. It seriously got me.
Yeah.
Cause I remember watching as a kid, as a younger person. It's he caught the bad guy, whatever. But this time watching it a little bit older now, and you just think about like this is a guy that's like his son is coming out. I was like, well, gotta kill my son. And just does it. And then like Gage's reactions, like when he starts crying.
Yes.
It's just brutal. And then, so that already is just really tough to watch. And then like he starts kind of wobbling away and he starts going, no fair, no fair. And then just like, He's a baby. He's like falling. He's not sure how he walks and he falls over. Oh, it's just brutal to watch. It's so tough.
There's something uncanny too about the way he falls over for the last time. And I was trying to figure out, like, did they film that in reverse and try to get him to like stand up properly? Or
I think he's walking backwards.
Okay.
Not like they reversed it, but I think like the kid is actually walking backwards and then like falls and turns at the same time to hit his head against the door. It's you know, you is a lucky accident. You know, I'm assuming the kid's fine. You know, but
no, impressive.
Yeah, it's just like that was so hard to watch this time around. You know, we had just I don't want to spoil the movie because it's fresh, but we both just recently watched a movie that involved a child death that was like, in the context of it, was bad, you know, obviously, but it didn't hit me like this one did.
Right.
I think there's still that emotional stuff there as well, but like the kid does a great job with it.
So expressive.
It's tough to watch, but it really like just like drives home everything, like all this sort of subtext that's been existing and perhaps hasn't been shown very well by some of the other actors, you know, the script or whatever. But in that moment, you just feel all of it. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and heck, it's that kid's performance and Mary Lambert's direction and making it all work. Lewis then burns Judd's house down just like they did in the past. Takes Rachel's body right to the cemetery. And I like this sequence. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I bought it that this guy is just this far gone, and he's just like, it's fresh. It'll be okay. This will work.
Which is honestly, isn't that like the common refrain in Reanimator? Like, it's just not fresh enough.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So little H.P. Lovecraft. But yeah, that he's like, okay, well, Gage came back, and he was even better than your dumb guy. Right. So now this guy's going to be, my wife's going to be perfect.
Buries her up there. He goes home. He goes back and just sits down on the floor and plays solitaire, it looks like, in kind of a daze, just waiting for Rachel to return, who does. They embrace, and she picks up a knife, and I don't think it's implied. Like, you hear him scream over the credits, so she stabs him in the back. And
which I like. The book ends with her just coming home and like putting her hand on his shoulder and saying, "Honey, I'm home."
I like that.
That's way creepier.
I like that better.
But yeah, the studio wanted like more gore, and it's like, good God, what did Gage do to her? Because her face is all like totally ripped off, and you could see, you know, there's just a socket where her eye is. Yeah, nasty looking. But I mean, great makeup, but just gnarly looking.
Totally. I do prefer the book ending. I do prefer the ominous dread that's suggesting.
Yeah.
So,
and then you get the great Ramones song, the Pet Sematary song, which the story is that basically they wrote it in 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Because Mary Lambert was like, well, okay, well, I do music stuff, so I can get the Ramones. Stephen King loved the Ramones, and she's like, I could probably get the Ramones to do a song, and she's like, we do this? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a very big Ramones fan by the time, like, I like reading about them. I just their music, by the time I got into it, I was like just looking for something like, it needs to be heavier and more aggressive than the Ramones, you know, and the Ramones are a pop band, you know, so but man, this song rules. I've always loved this one. Shout out to Adam, who sent us an email about the Ramones song. I happened to just get it right before we hit record, so I want to do some thinking, and we'll address that email on the Pet Sematary 2 episode in a couple of weeks. But thanks for writing that in. But I wanted to make sure I gave it some proper thought.
Absolutely.
Before our final thoughts on Pet Sematary, let's honor our dead. Victor Pascal, played by Brad Greenquist, hit by truck, bled to death. Missy Dandridge, played by Susan Blumert, hung herself. Gage Creed, played by Miko Hughes, hit by truck. Judd Crandall, played by Fred Gwynn, throat bitten out by Gage. Rachel Creed, played by Denise Crosby, hung by a noose by Gage. Lewis Creed, played by Dale Midkiff, stabbed in the back by Rachel. So just for the sake of keeping track of who died, we're only going to do the initial deaths and not the zombie killing.
It doesn't count twice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think that for the sake of this either, like, the World War I guy dying, like he dies like kind of off screen. And it's just like he comes back to life. It gets a little murky in what we consider like on screen kills here. So, hey, and am I going to be consistent with the rest of the series? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter.
That's a problem for you, the audience.
Exactly. If you get mad, write to us, 123 Fake Street, please send that letter in. But yeah, I mean, I still love the atmosphere of this film. I love the central idea of it. I like the strangeness in the woods and all of that. But yeah, I can definitely see how considering the character of Judd, a little bit more frustrating this time, even though I still find him so lovable.
Oh, I love him, but yeah, he's this like I said, malevolently stupid.
Yeah.
But I do still like him. He kind of is a nice sort of counterpoint to Pascal. Yeah, I mean, like I just think that some of this stuff feels a little bit more like a TV movie a bit, which is a bummer. Like that the first 45 minutes or so. Once it gets going and like you start getting this movie stuff, it's pretty good. It's still fine. Like it's not a bad movie by any means. It just didn't hit me the same way that it did before. But at the same time, not to just completely hem and haw about my own fucking opinion, but the final confrontation with Gage, like, got me so bad in a way I was not prepared for, but also like didn't feel cheap.
Yes.
Didn't feel like, oh, look, it's Jonathan Lipnicki. Hey, come on. How can you not love this? It felt very in the context of the story I was feeling it. I thought that was very effective.
Yeah.
What's so funny about this is, so this movie cost $11.5 million to make, made $89.5 million. Mary Lambert was like, I got an idea for a sequel. We'll focus on Ellie and about her story. And the studios went, girls, no thanks. Like, you made this huge hit. And then when it came time for the sequel, you just went, which Mary Lambert does direct, they went like, no, we're not doing any of that, dummy.
Yeah. And it was interesting in that it was so critically reviled too. I didn't really realize this. I should have looked up the review, but Gene Siskel gave it 0 out of 4 stars. He's never been into horror anyway.
I was going to say, Siskel, Did he recommend sending her death threats? Then that's a positive review from Gene Siskel.
Right. But yeah, a lot of people were saying like it never rises above its schlock value and stuff like that. I argue that it does, but maybe not by much. But there's something about it that just still works for me. But yeah, almost $90 million and pretty much critically panned across the board. That sounds like a horror movie from the 80s. But no, I still enjoyed watching it. I was paying attention more to the rules of this just because I think it's fun, and I'm just like, is there an entity in the woods? Is there not? You have to kind of make a decision one way or the other, but still do it without over explaining it. It's delicate, I know, but
I do think, I think your explanation to the point of like, well, it does have to do with freshness, and perhaps they could have underlined that a bit more. If you want to take away some sort of an overarching evil, that I guess take away isn't our word as much as like push to the background a lot more. Like you said, like where Pascal's like, I'm not allowed to go any further.
Yeah.
It's just sort of given as read. And granted, I don't want, explanations my handheld for everything.
Right.
But there was just some like inconsistencies that sort of stuck out to me this time around. But it's still, when it gets going, Even, and like I said, I think really a lot of my issues are just with the performances.
Yeah, that can certainly take you out of an otherwise solid, especially a movie that trades on such atmosphere and a sense of place, which I think it does well. But yeah, if the performances aren't keeping you grounded there, then you're not going to appreciate that quite as much. So,
do you think for like kill count for the whole thing?
Oh, good question.
Do you have a prediction for all of it?
I think it's going to go up. For sure. I think, and I've seen part 2 before, but I can't remember exactly how gory it gets. But I do think that they kind of up the game in part 2. I barely remember a single thing about the remake. So I can't recall. But I do think that it's going to get more violent, but it might do the thing of like, how many times are you going to put people in the ground up there? And how many times are they going to keep coming back and then you have to slaughter them? Like, I wonder if it goes like full like zombie movie type of thing. If you just start burying several people up there and then they're kind of like attacking a house or something. I don't know. I can't remember the second one well enough to know. It
becomes a trendy thing where, you got to have your own zombie.
Yeah. Right.
The Johnsons have 2.
Yeah.
We need to have more.
Exactly. So
go play in the street, kids.
Right. But yeah, for a 4 movie total, much like Pumpkinhead, I guess. But I'm going to go 42.
42. Okay. I'm going to be very conservative. I'm going to say 25.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it low.
Yeah.
Because I guess part of that is the hopes that this movie stays the series stays a more sort of personalized thing.
Right.
And there's not like rampages or anything, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, if there are, there are. And maybe that's done well.
Totally.
It seems like it's going to be a smaller body count.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for listening. If you want to check us out on Instagram, it's This May Hurt a Bit. YouTube is getting some traction over there at Hurt a Bit Pod, and you can email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. And if you're watching along with us, did this hold up for you? Did you have any new thoughts on it this time? Any of you who are parents, like, did it hit you differently than when you watched it when you were younger, which is totally makes sense, and it should,
Yeah.
Neither John and I are parents right now, so it doesn't hit me.
Well, I have cats. I mean, it's the same.
Yes, it's the same. But let us know what you thought, and if you're excited to keep watching this franchise with us, part 2, and then a remake, and then a prequel of a remake. So that's
hell yeah.
We're going rather circuitous with Pet Sematary this time. So
yeah. At least it's, I guess, a bit more honest about it, whereas Pumpkinhead was like, hey, it's the same movie again.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's a sequel. Where it's like, no, it's a remake. Now it's going to be a prequel of that remake.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we do now. What we do now.
Thanks for, I'm just so mad that Pumpkinhead lied to me, I guess.
Of all his sins, it's just the lying.
That was the worst one.
Can't do it.
That was the worst one.
Deception to your
face. He lied to a podcaster.
Right. All right, everyone. Well, watch. I almost said Pumpkinhead 2. Watch Pet Sematary 2. I believe it is on HBO. And tune in 2 weeks for our discussion on that one. So until then, good night.
Good night.
This has been a Two Penguins Media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and on Twitter at hurtabit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.